Welcome to Factual America, where we break down the stories shaping our nation with a focus on facts. No spin, just hard truths. Today, we're tackling a subject that's become one of the most urgent crises facing our country: the cartel's takeover of the southern border. From breathtaking desert landscapes patrolled by armed men to the political chaos in Washington, this is a story that's not only shaping policy, but changing the fabric of our national security, our communities, and the American way of life. You won't want to miss the twists, the untold stories, and the real-life heroes caught in the crossfire. Let's zoom in. What used to be a line dividing the United States and Mexico has morphed into a battleground. The wild terrain, once a symbol of the frontier, is now the front line of a silent war. Mexican drug cartels, once content to operate across the border, have expanded their reach, embedding themselves in American soil. Their grip is so powerful that many ranchers and residents no longer feel the area is under U.S. control. Gone are the days when the biggest threat was the occasional smuggler or border jumper. Today, heavily armed cartel operatives move drugs, people, and weapons with ruthless efficiency. Like shadow armies, they monitor the border with encrypted radio, night vision goggles, and high-tech drones, tools that once belonged solely to the world's military elites. But how did we get here? Rewind just 2 decades, and American border towns were sleepy. Sure, there was illegal crossing, but it was small scale compared to the siege we see now. The explosion of fentanyl and methamphetamine, combined with America's insatiable black market, turned the border into a prize worth fighting and killing for. Cartels adapted faster than the government ever could. Most shocking of all is the brazenness we now witness. Cartel gunmen fire across the border at U.S. law enforcement. Hits are ordered on American soil. Small Texas towns from Eagle Pass to McAllen now report record overdoses, kidnappings, and shootouts with cartel affiliates. The violence and intimidation have crossed from a distant threat to a problem festering in the heart of everyday America. You may wonder, why can't we simply stop them? The answer is as complex as the border itself. The terrain, stretching nearly 2,000 miles from the sands of California to the Rio Grande Valley, is nearly impossible to patrol end to end. Cartels exploit remote canyons, tunnels, and rivers. Some even use catapults and giant air cannons to fling drugs over the fence. Every time we build a wall, they build a tunnel. When we increase patrols, they unleash distractions or overwhelm the system with waves of illegal crossings. But there's another twist. Open border policies and gridlock in Washington have only emboldened these criminal syndicates. As debate over enforcement waxes and wanes, cartels adapt. Lax enforcement periods are a windfall. When crackdowns occur, cartels merely evolve. They cultivate a network of corrupted officials, paid lookouts, called halcones, and spotters on both sides of the border. In fact, it's not an exaggeration to say that major Mexican cartels, like the Sinaloa and Jalisco New Generation cartels, now function as de facto authorities in certain Mexican border towns, and their influence increasingly spills into the U.S. It's not just drugs. Human trafficking, extortion, and money laundering run rampant. Ranchers report being forced to pay protection money simply to work their own land safely. The sense of lawlessness isn't just anecdotal. You'll find headlines about standoffs and shootouts. But what goes unreported is the daily intimidation and terror faced by families who've lived on this land for generations. What does it mean when a Texas family can't let their kids play outside at sundown? Or when a rancher is forced to sleep with a loaded rifle by his bed? This silent occupation is eroding the very sense of sovereignty and security we once took for granted. Here's where it gets even more harrowing. The cartels are becoming modern corporations. They operate with strict hierarchy, sophisticated logistics, and a level of organization rivaling legitimate businesses. Cartels launder money through American banks, own legitimate companies, and even bribe local officials to keep their networks running smoothly. Let's talk about technology. Drones overhead now map border patrol movements. Encrypted smartphone apps let cartel chiefs coordinate thousands of mules, coyotes, and assassins in real time. Sophisticated counter-surveillance makes traditional law enforcement methods obsolete. The cartels are leveraging 21st century innovation, while border security is often playing catch-up with outdated tools and underfunded agencies. If that's not stunning enough, here's a mind-blowing stat. In 2023 alone, Border Patrol seized enough fentanyl to kill every man, woman, and child in America, several times over. Yet most experts agree that the seizures represent just a fraction of what actually makes it through. Every pill, every ounce of powder is money in the cartel's pockets, fueling more guns, more bribes, more violence. Meanwhile, American border towns feel abandoned. Overworked sheriffs and local police, often with rural budgets, are up against transnational crime syndicates armed with military-grade weaponry. Residents are forming their own militia groups, setting up neighborhood watches, and constructing private barriers, returning, in a sense, to the Wild West. The human cost is staggering and often hidden. Migrants, sometimes families with young children, pay thousands to coyotes who promise safe passage. Instead, many find themselves trafficked, abandoned in the desert, or forced to carry drugs. Border officials describe finding scenes of heartache, makeshift shoes left behind, water bottles emptied, prayer cards scattered in the sand next to the remains of those who didn't survive the crossing. The twist here? Sometimes law enforcement on both sides is forced to work together. While political rhetoric demonizes Mexico, frontline agents, American and Mexican, risk their lives battling a common enemy. But corruption and fear run deep. Mexican police who oppose cartels often face grisly reprisals, and honest agents are vastly outnumbered. Let's get personal with stories from those living this nightmare. Meet the owner of a 10,000-acre cattle ranch whose father was murdered after refusing to cooperate with cartel demands. Or the Border Patrol agent who found himself caught in a nighttime firefight he described as a war zone without rules. Or the teenager forced to smuggle drugs under threat to her family, forever marked by her crossing. There are flashes of hope. Tech-savvy entrepreneurs are developing new surveillance tools. Brave whistleblowers expose corrupt officials. Grassroots community groups provide aid to victims and fight for their neighborhoods. Some local law enforcement offices are partnering with federal agencies, though they remain vastly outgunned. But the stark reality is this: as long as there's money to be made, through drugs, human trafficking, or exploitation, the cartels will keep coming. Washington debates endlessly about walls versus technology, legal paths versus crackdowns. On the ground, every day is a battle just to survive, let alone thrive. Here's another gut punch. Cartels recruit American-born teens with promises of quick cash for driving loads across the border. Social media is now a recruiting tool. Ads disguised as job offers lure kids as young as 16. It's not happening in some distant, lawless country. It's happening in our own backyard. Meanwhile, American consumers play an unwitting role. Every dollar spent on illegal drugs or every illicit package delivered feeds the beast. The opioid crisis, raging from coast to coast, is intimately linked to cartel operations. Those overdoses in small-town Ohio, California, or Texas often trace back to a single river crossing deep in the border brush. Let's not forget the unsung heroes. Border agents, underpaid and overstretched, face not just danger, but relentless political crossfire. Every policy change out of D.C. directly affects their lives and the safety of the people they swore to protect. Morale is plummeting, yet they show up day after day, risking their personal safety honorably, even as the cartels profit from confusion. So what's the solution? There's no easy answer. More walls? Cartels dig tunnels or use drones? More patrols? They overwhelm the system or bribe officials? The truth is, this is a war fought not just with guns and walls, but with information, community engagement, and the demand for justice on both sides of the border. Ending this crisis requires acknowledging its complexity. It's about national security and compassion, sovereignty and human dignity. Those who live on the border deserve better than to be pawns in a political battle. We owe it to them and to ourselves as Americans to tell the truth and demand meaningful solutions. Here at Factual America, we're committed to shining a light on the real challenges, even when the answers aren't simple. The cartel's takeover of the southern border isn't just someone else's problem, it's the story of America at a crossroads. Now it's your turn. What are your thoughts on the cartel's grip at the southern border? Have you or your community been affected? What solutions do you think would work? Leave your comments below. We want to hear your voice. And don't forget to let us know what tough topics you'd like us to tackle in future episodes. If you found this video informative, make sure you subscribe to Factual America and hit the notification bell so you never miss a truth that matters.